Okay, at this point I'd like to talk a little bit about shading, how to use your pencils, how to use your kneadable eraser, and things like that. So I'm going to show you some examples, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration. Now I have the disadvantage of having a large format here, so you're looking at the base of the document camera here and the shadow of the camera overhead. So you just have to ignore that. In the meantime, this is just basic shapes, and one of the ways that I like to shade is I hold my pencil like this, and then I start working in a diagonal fashion, and I can strengthen the graphite by really concentrating and putting more graphite down, and I can lighten it as I just draw light strokes across. I'm right-handed, and so my strokes are diagonal this direction because that's the way I hold the pencil. When I get into areas like this, I'm going to put down a lot more graphite because I need the intense color. I usually sketch out with HB pencil, and then I'll switch to my 6B or 4B, depending on which one I'm going to use, and I'll start working with that. Okay, so this is one of the examples of working with the basic shapes. This is another one, and basically the only difference is that it's a little bit darker, which I like. But also on this one, the light source is coming from behind and above, and the other one was about the same. This one's even further back behind. And so because of that, my core shadow is very, very dark along there. There's a very light area here because the light is bouncing off the cone and reflecting back onto that back side. Same thing here with the sphere. The darkest part is right along the core shadow, but I've got this cube here with the light bouncing off of it and reflecting onto the cube. And so that's why this side is so light. And then over here, the light's coming down, bouncing off the surface, back up onto the sphere. And so that's why you see these lighter areas on the outside, but right here where the light's passing by, that's where it's the darkest. Same thing on the cone. Now on the cylinder, the core shadow is straight up and down. But when you get to the cone, it starts at the center point here, but it swings like a pendulum back and forth. Right here, the light's behind, and so this line swings this way. If the light was coming from the front, it would swing back this way. And once again, it's dark along here, it's lighter here because of the light reflecting off the base. Okay, when we get into the still life, these are just examples of different of the basic shapes. Once again, you've got a cylinder, you've got another cylinder here, you've got a sphere with the apple. The books create elongated cubes, and this big piece of pottery here, it's basically down on the bottom half. It's an inverted cone, and then it's a sphere in the middle, and then a cylinder at the top. Okay, so once again, what I'm doing is just using my pencil and drawing back and forth. And I want to sharpen my pencil quite often because a 6B lead is very, very soft, and so it's going to leave all of its graphite on the paper, so you want to be able to sharpen it as many times as you need to. The cast shadows, once again, the light's coming this time from the front a little bit, and but down this direction. And so here's the cast shadow, or the core shadow on this. The cast shadow's coming where the core shadow starts here. Okay. Another example, basically the same idea. Instead of apples, it has eggs in it. But the books are your cubes, This is your cylinder. And it's interesting, mason jars quite often are squared off, so they're basically a cube, and then they round off at the top. But anyway, okay. Okay, I have a couple of cones here, and this first one, the light is coming from the front and from above, and so the core shadow runs right down here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my pencil, and I'll just start laying down some lines. Now this is a fairly small area, so I'm going to hold the pencil close to the way that I would write with it. I'm going to continue down. Now if I had a reflected area back here, I'd end up with a light spot here. And then it would get dark again. Remember, the core shadow is always a little bit dark. Quite often it's the darkest part that you can see of the shadow on the back side. One of the things I like about drawing your pencil in one direction, it tends to unify your composition. But it's not the only way, and I'll demonstrate that on the next cone over here. Once I've covered this area in, now I can come back and start adding the darks. Now it's going to lighten a little bit down here because of the reflective light that's bouncing off of the surface down here. But I know it's going to be dark at the very top, so I'll come in here and darken that up a bit. I left this light spot up here because I'm imagining that there's a surface over here that is reflecting light onto it. So I'll leave it a little bit light. As I come down, it darkens through here and then gets light again as it comes towards the surface. On this one over here, the light is coming, let's see, oh here the light was coming this way, that's right. And from the front a little bit, this one's coming from behind, so we see a little less of the lit surface here. Now, I mentioned that some people like to do different things. Some people like to crosshatch. And so you can come in here and go one direction, go another direction. And that way you can lay down your different layers of graphite. So there's not just one way to shade. You can do different things. And a lot of people really like changing direction. Okay, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do. And remember, once again, it's going to be dark up here. lighten as you come down because there's going to be more things reflecting off of its surface. Okay, now I'm going to move on to this apple. Have a nice Granny Smith apple here, and let's see if I can set it the way that I had it earlier. Okay, so when you're doing shapes like this, it's okay to outline them to a degree, but you don't want to have the line so heavy that it looks like a coloring book. Now on this, for instance, on this side of the cone, what you can do is darken the background. So it looks like, you can expose your edges that way rather than just a big heavy line. Quite often when you're dealing with a spotlight, something like that, it illuminates your objects, but everything around it is quite dark. So that's just another thing that you can do with your background. Okay, so we're back to the apple. So I'm going to go around. One of the things that I did when I initially drew this out is I mapped out my highlights. I've got a reflection right here, a reflection right there. And I need to be aware of that so that I don't color them in. It's even more important in watercolor that you leave those spots because it's very hard to remove watercolor paint to reveal a highlight. Okay, now as I look at this, it's very, very light across here. And then it darkens down in here. And I have this dark little stem. Now, my light source is coming kind of from the front, and so this darkens quite rapidly right along here. And then the trick to all of this is being able to see these things and just interpret them in your mind. Here's a dark shape, that goes around here, and then it's a very light shape here. And if you think of these things as shapes, it makes it a lot easier. Now it's not very dark on the top. In fact, it's very light up through here. You got a little bit of darkness coming up through here. But for the most part, this area up here is quite light. And then I've got this highlight right here that's I want it to pop out, so I'm going to make sure that it's dark on the areas around it. And then this darkness continues down here, but it gets a little bit lighter. Once again, you've got light reflecting off the top of the table. Okay. So I'm going to leave the apple for a little bit. I've got some dark spots down here. And this part over here, I've got some really nice light areas. Okay, so I finished that. When it comes to the shadows, your cast shadow comes, you know, wherever the light's coming, it's going to start right where the core shadow is. And so as I come here, this is a cone, so it's going to be straight lines. And this is a place where I can take my pencil and just hold it whichever way is comfortable. And drag it along the side. As I come up and I need more detail, I'll hold it like this a little bit. I want to keep this a little bit lighter because I know that there's reflective light coming back onto the cylinder and then back onto the surface where the cast shadow is. So I'll keep this just a little bit lighter here, but I want to darken it as it comes out here. So however you decide that you want to hold your pencil and what type of strokes you make, the one thing I would encourage you is to keep it looking clean. You know, if you start smudging it and trying to move all the colors around, it looks dirty and it's, you know, it's rarely that nice. So there's nothing wrong with showing your strokes. Just like a painter, brush strokes add to the texture and the interest of the painting sometimes. If you're a potter, seeing the marks of your fingers on the clay, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. With your pencil, there's nothing wrong with leaving the stroke so that you can actually see the actual direction of the graphite being laid down. One of the reasons that I ask you to do one copy on newsprint is so that you can work these things out. And then after you've done that, and sometimes you don't even have to complete it all the way, you get the idea of what you want to do, and then you can do it on the nice paper, the sketch paper, and come up with a very nice composition. Let's talk about erasers for just a moment. You've got your standard eraser, pink, pearl, or sometimes they're white, different things. But these are for scrubbing away and eliminating graphite. Like if I want to remove this whole area here, I simply rub it out. Okay? But on the other hand, a kneaded eraser is very different. It's soft, it stretches out, it's reusable to some degree. We use it for a long time. But how we use this is we dab with it. This is going to just absorb the graphite. So let's say I wanted to make this area much lighter. I simply start to push down. You can see how that's getting lighter. Now what that does is it leaves all this graphite on the surface of your eraser. So if I were to put this back down, I would leave that mark sometimes. And so by stretching and rolling the eraser in on itself, that moves the graphite throughout the entire body. And lo and behold, we've got a clean eraser once again. So now I can come back and start removing more graphite if I need to.